Picture this, a modern city skyline at night. Homes, hospitals, sprawling factories, electric vehicles charging up, massive data centers humming away. They're all brightly illuminated, pulling just colossal amounts of electricity all at exactly the same time. Now, you might be wondering, why do the lights stay bright, even when thousands of heavy industrial machines and air conditioners switch on at the exact same moment? What secretly keeps this massive, incredibly complex power grid balanced and prevents it from just collapsing under the immense strain?
Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're focusing on a humble, totally hidden technology that is absolutely vital to the electrical grid you and I rely on every single day. Behind the scenes of every reliable power system, there is a quiet, unsung hero that rarely gets the attention it deserves, yet it literally saves our infrastructure from overloaded equipment and skyrocketing costs. We're going to uncover exactly how it works. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the grid's unsung hero. 2. The reactive power problem. 3. The power triangle. 4. The magic of capacitors. And finally, 5. Powering the modern grid. I promise you, this complex engineering topic is going to be both accessible and completely fascinating.
Section 1. The grid's unsung hero.
So let's rule out the usual suspects people typically think of when they imagine what keeps our grid stable. When we think of a reliable electrical grid, our minds immediately go to the big stuff, right? But this unsung hero, it's not a massive spinning generator, it's not a giant metal transformer, it's not even a cutting-edge lithium-ion battery. No, it is a capacitor. Despite its incredibly simple outward appearance, a capacitor plays one of the most fundamentally important roles in electrical distribution. From improving power quality to stabilizing voltage and reducing overall energy losses, capacitors are the invisible shields protecting our grid. Without them, oh man, our power systems would experience wild voltage fluctuations, constantly overloaded equipment, and completely unnecessary operating costs.
Section 2. The reactive power problem.
But why do we even need capacitors in the first place? Well, the invisible villain of our story is something called reactive power. This is measured in kilovolt amperes reactive, or kVAR. Let me give you the definition clearly. Reactive power is power that creates the magnetic fields needed for inductive equipment to operate. But, and here's the kicker, it performs absolutely no useful work itself. None. Now, many common electrical devices on the grid, think induction motors, fluorescent lighting, welding machines, air conditioners, they absolutely need this reactive power. It doesn't physically turn a motor shaft or heat up an oven. But without it, most industrial motors simply wouldn't run.
And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Think of it like pushing someone on a playground swing. Some of your physical effort actually moves the swing forward, right? That's the useful work. But another portion of your effort simply keeps the swing moving back and forth, fighting against gravity and momentum. That non-productive pushing is exactly how reactive power works. It just continuously flows back and forth between the power source and the electrical equipment without actually producing any tangible, useful energy at the end of the line.
So the crucial point here is that while reactive power is absolutely necessary for those magnetic fields, it occupies highly valuable space in our power lines and transformers. And this creates a whole cascade of negative effects. This non-working power increases electrical losses, it causes disruptive voltage drops, it literally heats up the cables, and it drastically reduces transformer capacity. Ultimately, this unproductive energy forces utility companies to build much larger, heavily oversized infrastructure than they would otherwise need, just to handle the extra load.
Section 3. The power triangle.
Okay, let's slow down for just a second. To really see the math and economics behind this massive efficiency penalty, we have to separate 3 types of electrical power. First up, real power measured in kilowatts or kW. This is the power that performs actual useful work. It rotates motors, lights lamps, charges your phone. Put simply, it's the power you actually pay for. Second, we have our problematic necessity, reactive power, measured in kVAR, which just supports those magnetic fields. And third, we have apparent power, measured in kVA, which is the total combined package traveling through the grid. Honestly, think of apparent power like buying a bag of potato chips. The chips are the real power you want, the air in the bag is the reactive power you don't want, but you still have to pay for the whole bag.
Engineers map out this relationship using a simple right triangle. The horizontal side at the bottom represents our useful real power. The vertical side, going straight up, represents our reactive power. And the diagonal side connecting them, that's the apparent power. So what does this all mean? Well, because it's a triangle, the larger that vertical reactive component gets, the longer the diagonal line of apparent power becomes. A longer diagonal literally means more total current has to flow through the electrical system. And more current means more heat, more energy loss, and significantly higher operating costs.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it translates into the real world through a metric called power factor, which essentially measures how effectively electrical power is converted into useful work. A power factor of 1 is perfect. Let's look at two competing factories producing the exact same amount of products. Factory A has an excellent power factor of 0.98. Factory B operates at a pretty poor power factor of 0.70. Even though their manufacturing output is absolutely identical, Factory B requires vastly more current from the grid. Its transformers are overworked, its cables carry excess current, and its energy losses just spike. Because of this, in many places, utilities will literally charge steep financial penalties to factories like B just for their inefficiency.
Section 4. The magic of capacitors.
So how do we fix this incredibly costly problem? Well, to understand how our elegant, moving part-free solution steps in, let's imagine a neighborhood where every single house needs water. Step 1, the utility pumps water from a distant reservoir miles away. Step 2, the long main pipeline has to carry so much volume that it gets bogged down and loses pressure, just like cables heating up from reactive power. But then, Step 3, instead of pumping everything from miles away every single minute, you place a small storage tank right inside the neighborhood. Now residents draw water locally. Step 4, the main pipeline carries less water, pressure improves, and grid efficiency is beautifully restored. This is exactly what a capacitor bank does. By acting as a local storage tank, it supplies reactive power directly to the nearby loads. You see, a capacitor stores electrical energy in an electric field. Unlike industrial motors and transformers that consume reactive power, capacitors actually generate it. The engineering irony here is just beautiful. By simply placing these simple boxes near the factories or heavy loads, the utility no longer has to send reactive power over long distances. The current flowing through the main distribution feeder drops, voltage improves, and transformer loading goes way down. And honestly, the best part? These devices act as giant money-saving loopholes for the electrical grid, achieving all of this with zero moving parts, zero fuel consumption, and incredibly low maintenance.
Section 5. Powering the modern grid. Let's zoom out for a second to see the massive scale of how utility companies deploy these globally to keep our modern lives running. Utilities install thousands of these capacitor banks everywhere, from medium voltage distribution feeders mounted right on your neighborhood poles down to the inside of massive substations. They provide huge systemic wins. Ready? They vastly improve power factor. They drastically reduce electrical losses. They instantly increase feeder capacity without the massive expense of building new power lines. They stabilize voltage during peak heavy demand periods. And they improve overall power quality for everyday customers like you and me.
But today, this isn't just about static boxes sitting idly on a pole. As global electricity demand skyrockets, thanks to the widespread adoption of EVs, the integration of renewables, and rapidly expanding cities, modern smart grid systems have had to evolve. They now use advanced controllers, sophisticated sensors, and communication networks to automatically switch these capacitors on and off. Depending on real-time voltage levels or even just the time of day, this highly coordinated, automated strategy is absolutely crucial for ensuring the grid stays at peak efficiency under constantly changing, unpredictable loads. Which leaves us with a fascinating final thought. We now know that these fuel-free, silent devices are the ultimate unsung heroes of our electrical infrastructure. Millions of capacitors are actively saving our electrical grid from collapse and saving utility companies billions in infrastructure costs right at this very moment. But what exactly is inside them? How are they physically built to hold and discharge this invisible force? Well, that is a mechanical mystery we're going to have to unpack in our next explainer. You know those tiny little capacitors you see on a computer circuit board? Well, today, we are scaling way up. We're looking at utility-scale capacitor banks. These are the massive installations operating between 4 kV and 35 kV that serve as the hidden stabilizers of our entire electrical distribution network. Okay, let's dive into this.
So here is our roadmap for today. We are going on a micro to macro mission. We'll start with the anatomy of a capacitor, then look at fixed versus switch banks, explore the mechanics of switching, figure out optimizing location, calculate the economic payoff, and wrap up with the power quality challenge. Basically, we're unpacking the hidden tech that stabilizes our grid and saves literally millions.
Section 1. Anatomy of a capacitor. Let's zoom right into the micro level and look inside one of those massive steel boxes you see mounted on utility poles or sitting in substations. At the very heart of the whole setup is the dielectric. Think of it as a super high-quality insulating material that separates conductive plates. This is what allows the unit to actually store electrical energy right there in an electric field. And by connecting dozens, sometimes even hundreds of these units together in a precise mix of series and parallel connections, utility companies can dial in the exact voltage rating and get the precise reactive power output they need.
Of course, a massive bank like this needs some serious heavy-duty support components to run safely. Picture an exploded view of this whole thing. First, you've got these heavy-duty bus bars acting like electrical superhighways to connect and distribute current evenly. Second, individual fuses are ready to isolate any internal faults so the rest of the bank can actually stay online. Third, surge arresters are standing guard outside, basically acting as a shield against lightning strikes and crazy weather. And tying it all together? Intelligent controllers. They are the brains of the operation, constantly monitoring the grid's real-time electrical needs.
Moving on to Section 2, Fixed versus Switched Banks. Let's zoom out just a bit to see how these banks actually operate out in the field based on fluctuating electrical demands.
Utilities basically rely on two main types here. On the left, we have fixed capacitor banks. These are your continuous 24/7 workhorses. They stay connected all the time, pumping out reactive power no matter what the load is doing. That makes them absolutely perfect for heavy industrial facilities that have a constant, non-stop demand. But on the right, we have switched capacitor banks. These guys are dynamic, stage by stage, and highly intelligent. They only turn on when system conditions, like a sudden drop in the power factor, actually call for it. And when demand drops, they disconnect. It's a brilliant way to prevent overcompensation and make sure the grid gets exactly what it needs right when it needs it.
Section 3, the mechanics of switching. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the intense engineering it actually takes to turn these massive devices on and off safely. I mean, energizing these banks is way more complicated than just flicking a light switch in your living room. The exact moment capacitors are energized, they can generate incredibly violent, high inrush currents. If that's not controlled absolutely perfectly, those currents cause severe electrical transients that can literally destroy your equipment. No way you want that, right? To stop this, utilities use highly specialized gear, specifically vacuum switching technology. By operating the electrical contacts inside a sealed vacuum chamber, they almost entirely minimize dangerous arcing. It makes the switching incredibly reliable and adds years to the equipment's life.
But how do they know exactly when to trigger those vacuum switchers? That falls entirely to modern automatic controllers. These things are incredibly smart. They are constantly crunching variables in real time. We're talking system voltage, power factor, reactive power demand, load current, time schedules, and even seasonal operating conditions. They process all that data instantly to keep the grid perfectly balanced. And what's really cool is that many of these advanced systems communicate directly back to utility control centers, so engineers can monitor performance and make remote adjustments without ever having to jump in a truck and visit the site.
All right, Section 4, optimizing the installation location. We're moving to the macro level now to see where engineers actually place these massive devices across the wider grid infrastructure.
Because, let's be honest, a poorly placed capacitor bank doesn't do anyone much good. If we journey down the grid, we generally see three main strategic locations. Step 1. Inside substations. Putting them here improves the overall power factor for multiple outgoing feeders all at once. Step 2. Along distribution feeders. These are the pole-mounted units you've probably seen near residential or commercial districts, and they're there to reduce current over the longer sections of power lines. And finally, Step 3, at large industrial facilities. By placing them right at the source of massive inductive loads, they supply reactive power locally, which keeps unnecessary current from clogging up the wider utility network.
And this brilliantly illustrates how engineers actually figure out that perfect spot. Distribution network analysis. There is zero guesswork here. Engineers use highly detailed computer simulations that model thousands of electrical components. This software predicts exactly how a capacitor's placement will impact voltage, current, equipment loading, and system losses. By relying on these ultra-precise calculations, utilities can drop these banks in the perfect spots to dramatically lower power losses and improve the voltage profiles for literally everyone on that grid.
Which brings us right to Section 5, the economic payoff. Let's connect the physical placement of these banks directly to the massive financial impact they have on our utilities and industries.
The financial logic here is just staggering, and it really boils down to one word: thousands. That number represents the thousands of kilowatt hours saved every single year from just a modest reduction in current. See, when a distribution feeder has to carry excessive reactive current, it pushes up the electrical resistance. And how does that resistance show up? as wasted heat radiating right off the conductors. By reducing that feeder current, capacitor banks immediately stop that heat loss. They save a massive amount of energy, and by extension, a whole lot of money.
And the bottom line benefits just keep piling up. Because they reduce the overall current, the transformers and cables are carrying a lighter load. That directly increases the capacity of the existing equipment. What that means for utilities is they can take on new customers without needing immediate upgrades. It literally postpones expensive new substation construction for years. For industrial facilities, it entirely eliminates those heavy financial penalties that electricity providers charge if you operate with a poor power factor. When you compound all these savings, the initial investment in a capacitor bank very often achieves a full ROI in just a few short years. It is a total game changer.
Finally, Section 6, the Power Quality Challenge. Let's pivot slightly to the modern challenges facing today's electrical networks.
Our modern world is full of complex devices, variable speed drives, solar inverters, electric vehicle chargers, and they introduce a whole new layer of complexity to the grid, specifically harmonics and voltage disturbances. And this brings us to a really critical, provocative crossroads. Do capacitor banks actually solve these harmonic distortions, or, depending on how they are set up, can they make them worse? It's a fascinating dilemma right at the heart of today's power quality analysis, and it's exactly what we are going to tackle in our next explainer. Until then, keep questioning how the grid works behind the scenes.